Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. The fermented food I ate in the last video was very popular, so in the upcoming videos, I will introduce the methods for making these fermented foods one by one. Today, I will talk about the method for making tempeh. I often use chickpeas as a substitute for soybeans, so this time, the tempeh is also made with chickpeas. We soak 300 grams of dry beans in boiling water. If using room temperature water, it needs to soak overnight. This is what they look like after soaking for 3 hours, having doubled in size. At this point, we need to remove the skins from the chickpeas. Some people prefer to do this after the beans are steamed, but at that time, it's easy to crush the beans and difficult to handle. Therefore, I always remove the skins from the soaked raw beans. In fact, I just gently rub them a bit. Don't force it or get too caught up in it. It's okay if there are some skins on the beans. You can see that I usually process them to this extent. For 300 grams of beans, it only takes about 10 minutes. Then I put the beans into the electric pressure cooker. I prefer to steam soybeans, but since chickpeas are larger, I generally add a cup of water to cook them. Choosing the right legumes, the chickpeas should be cooked for about 55 minutes, until they are soft enough to mash easily. Filter the beans. And the water that is filtered out can actually be whipped to make vegan meringue. For instructions on how to whip it or the method for making meringue, you can refer to my previous videos. As you can see, the skins of the beans are clearly visible. Because tempeh fermentation requires moisture control, the beans should be dry. Therefore, I will stir-fry the cooked chickpeas in a skillet to remove the moisture. Risopus mold is available. 300-gram beans needed, and a small bag suffices. Wait for the beans to cool before mixing in the mold powder. Adding rice flour aids successful tempeh production. Glycogen in rice flour feeds Risopus mold, which can accelerate fermentation of tempeh. This time, I specifically made one batch with rice flour and one without, so we can see the difference later. For each batch of tempeh, I usually use small bee-food bags, but this time I ran out while recording the video, so I thought I would try using plastic wrap instead. Pack it like this, about 2 to 3 centimeters thick is sufficient. The fermentation of tempeh is an oxygen-consuming process, so remember to poke small holes around the bag like this. And don't forget the 4 edges. 300 grams of beans are packed into 3 bags like this, and the next step is fermentation. The optimal fermentation temperature for tempeh is between 30 to 35 degrees. In the summer, I usually ferment it at room temperature in my kitchen pantry, but it has been too hot at home these days, and the air conditioning hasn't been sufficient, so I took out my winter fermentation equipment again. This is an incubator that our child originally bought. It has a heating plate at the bottom, and on top there is a water bag with a temperature controller. For the fermentation of tempeh, the temperature should not be too high. If it is too high, the fermentation will fail. Maintaining a constant temperature of around 30 degrees Celsius is best. Additionally, the fermentation of natto requires ventilation, so I have 2 small clips for that. I just stack these 2 small clamps together, and there will be some ventilation underneath. At the beginning, you can keep it warm by covering it with a small blanket, like a towel or anything else. You don't necessarily have to buy an incubator. You can get a constant temperature fermentation box. Alternatively, if you have a well-ventilated area in your home, where the temperature can reach around 30 degrees, such as your balcony, you can also ferment at room temperature. Let's take a look at this tempeh that has been fermented for 20 hours. Notice that this one has rice flour added, which results in more mycelium compared to the one without rice flour. Generally, tempeh fermentation takes about 36 to 48 hours. The duration of fermentation is related to the fermentation temperature. At this temperature, I only need to ferment for 36 hours, but due to an unexpected situation at home, the fermentation time was extended, which significantly affected the tempeh that was over-fermented and had rice flour added. On the contrary, the version without rice flour turned out to be better. This also proves that rice flour can indeed accelerate the fermentation of tempeh. However, I couldn't bear to show the viewers that version, so I made a new batch using soybeans. Let me summarize the key points for making tempeh. 300 grams of dried beans are combined with 3 grams, which is 1 packet of starter culture, and a small amount of rice flour can accelerate the fermentation of tempeh. Of course, not adding it is also not a big problem. When placing it in a sealed bag, remember to poke
small holes. The size of my bag is 8 by 13 cm. 300 grams of dried beans can be soaked to make 4 bags of tempeh. The fermentation temperature should be between 30 to 35 degrees Celsius. Placing them on a drying rack below is beneficial for ventilation. At the beginning of fermentation, you can cover the tempeh with a towel. After 15 hours of fermentation, small water droplets should appear on the tempeh bags, indicating that fermentation is going well. You can touch it with your hand. If it feels warmer than your hand, you can remove the towel and no longer need to cover it. Look, this is what it looks like after 38 hours of fermentation. It's basically completed. However, there are still a few areas that are not fully covered in white because I didn't completely remove the skins from the soybeans. If you want it to be perfect, just make sure to remove all the skins from the soybeans. Once the tempeh is made, be sure to store it in the freezer. This is the soybean version of tempeh, and this is the chickpea version that I made earlier. In fact, you can use various types of beans to make tempeh. I have also made it with black beans before. Everyone can try it out more. If you succeed, remember to share your experiences in the comments section. Although tempeh is a fermented food, it can withstand high temperatures. However, my favorite way to eat it is to pan fry it until golden brown, and then sprinkle it with rice flour. Alright, high-protein probiotic food, let's get started on making it. The next video will introduce the method for making kombucha. Friends who are interested can subscribe to my channel to avoid missing out on future exciting videos. If you like my video, please give it a thumbs up and save it to encourage me. I am Tan Shaoxian, sharing a healthy lifestyle. This video ends here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. Hey, is it really that bad?